Good Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Green Talk for the Eden World Initiative. Today, we have an expert who is going to educate us on how different stakeholders can work together to mainstream biodiversity in agricultural landscape. And briefly, I would like to introduce the person of Okweyemi Elijilo, if I'm correct, and is an expert, an ecologist, and also skilled in climate actions, biodiversity conservation, agroecology, and also mobilize youth both in Nigeria and across the globe to take action in conservation issues globally. And also is the founder for the Environment Nigeria and the director of climate change and community development at World Ecological Concepts Limited. Right now, I would like to say, Okwem, welcome to the platform. So, do you want to say hello to people in the house? We have people who are watching us globally today. So, what would you like to tell them briefly before we start?
Yeah, hi Temi. Thank you so much for having me. Of course, it's always a pleasure to speak about topic and thematics that I'm passionate about, not just the climate space, but agriculture and the nexus in between this and the wider sustainable development goals. And yeah, it's an honor to be here, and I look forward to sharing my experience in this space. Yeah, thanks again.
All
Absolutely.
right, thank you. I think I would say we are the one who is lucky to have you here. Before now, myself and you, we've always relate. And when we talk about the agricultural space, I'm always like, oh yeah, you're real skilled in this sector. And if we had to look at the current crisis globally, and food production is one of the major agenda for the world right now, and especially for we in Africa, looking at the problem of malnutrition and food insecurity. So that is one of our major goals. And also looking at the other angle, especially if you look at the Convention on Biological Diversity framework, which is going on currently in the world. If you look at their target, for people in the agricultural landscape and organizations like FAO, ICRAF, and their major concern right now is based on the fact that most of the goals and target for the post 2020 global biodiversity framework do not recognize kind of like the agricultural landscape is not recognized in a way of conserving biological diversity. So I would like to ask you that what do you think about the concept of mainstreaming biodiversity into the agricultural landscape? And I don't really know how well this will go with you because I know you've related farmers in different space. And if you feel that mainstreaming agricultural landscape, I mean, we should be real here, is something that is possible. How best do you think we can go about this? I mean, what approach can we use? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks again, Temi. Yeah, of course, it's an interesting concept to mainstream the agro biodiversity. I mean, having this as a nexus. I mean, addressing the nexus between these two. It's beyond doubt now that agriculture. I mean, taking it from the aspect of climate change as well as the threats to biodiversity conservation that agriculture in its wider space and scope has been attributed to. I mean, this agriculture has been implicated in these major planetary emergencies. And one thing that mainstreaming agriculture into this biodiversity space, one thing that it addresses is the fact that it helps to bring agriculture to the front line of climate and biodiversity actions, and which is what is much needed. Africa, like you mentioned, agriculture remains the backbone of the African economy, And of course, the implication in these major challenges, the climate space as well as the biodiversity conservation space, cannot be invalidated. So, and what we cannot do, considering the teeming and increasing population of the African continent, is we can say, let's reduce the rate and the extent or at which we produce our food. So one thing that we can do is to see how we can better how we can better produce our food and as much. I mean, now I think the discussion should even be beyond the production, but also to consumption as well. I mean, talking about the value chains involved in the production system, this has to be inclusive for us to really achieve any results, even if we are bringing agriculture into the biodiversity action space. And that's what we really need. But most times, the adoption of these best practices is always challenging, especially for the target communities now. I mean, in the space of saying, bringing the knowledge in a language that the farmers that are concerned clearly understand, is one thing that has not really been done. And of course, the adoption of these best ecological farming practices might be a challenge for the farmers to adopt widely, and that's just one of it. And another one would be the incorporation of the knowledge of these people. One thing that we do is we just sit up there and make decisions, and just say this is how best we should farm. This is how best we can reposition agriculture the front line of climate and ecological actions, without getting the insights of the people that are connected at the grassroots level. I mean, the policies, say intervention, say everything, decisions that have to be made needs to still be adopted by the people at the grassroots level. But when they are not incorporated at the onset of this discussion, when they are not included, their voices are not heard in this discussion, adopting it would definitely be a challenge to them. So to answer the question of how best we can make this work, of course, there are lots of opportunities there. I mean, to talk about the, of course, making the knowledge in the first place available for them, but the aspect of making it as inclusive as possible. That's one thing that needs to be there, and they need to work more with government at the local level, who are better positions to implement to influence actions in their community, needs also to be carried along, and that would help basically to strengthening the adoption and the implementation at the country and the national and local level as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a very beautiful one. Like, okay, I understand. Like, you've actually answered some of my question, because I was about asking you kind of like, how can the government agency and be able to work with the agricultural sector? Now, you've actually mentioned from the grassroots level, that is the local people, the local farmers in themselves, how they can get carried along. But if you look at, for example, Nigeria as a country, if you look at, we have the Ministry of Environment, we have the Ministry of Agriculture. Do you think that like the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment, like they need to come together to build synergy themselves and develop some framework and policies, leaving aside political issues, so that they can actually work together and then work alongside with these grassroots people? Do you think this is necessary? Because when we look at major projects, sometimes we depend on international sponsors to fund us, so we can actually be able to implement some of these projects. And I believe that the Ministry of Environment, they have their own goals, they have their own target. We also have the agriculture. Do you think these people also need to work together, so they can actually partner, like maybe work as a body together to work alongside the grassroots people who are the farmers, to ensure that the biodiversity on agricultural landscape is being achieved? Do you think this is possible?
Yes, I think one of the major limitations that we have to even achieving major change in the way in our food system strategy has been the fact that various agencies and ministries are in charge of this food and farming system of the thing. And oftentimes you get to realize that these ministries and agencies are not aligned in their priorities. So when one is going this direction, the other is probably going another direction, and that's largely I mean, it has been the major limitations to achieving this change in narrative as touching food and the wider ecosystem conservation of the thing. So of course it would be a major advantage. It would be a major move in the right direction if these agencies can come together and find that platform that aligns the priorities. Of course, what we all want is to address the challenge with food sovereignty. Now, I won't even be talking about food security, about food sovereignty in its essence. This is where the focus should largely be. Not just people having food to eat, but having the food in the right quantity and quality, And that's when we can say we are addressing the challenge with malnutrition, with people not having food to eat. So it's not that people should just have food to eat, but let them have food that delivers on set objectives of healthy living. And that's what we really need. That's when we can say we are achieving more than one goals while addressing the zero hunger in the SDG goal. So it will be largely essential for these agencies and ministries to come together to work. But what we are not saying is even for them to come together and formulate policies. We have a lot of policies there in Nigeria already, for one. I mean, and that's the same thing for many African countries as well. If you go through some of these policies that they have, you would say that they have some of these policies that speaks to sustainable agriculture, conservation agriculture, agroecology as a major system as well that mimics the natural diversity of the forest ecosystem. But what we are lacking is largely the framework for the implementation of these policies. For one, in major of the country, you'd see that NDCs, which is the major framework for addressing, to show the commitment of this government to addressing the climate crisis. And if you check through the NDCs throughout Nigeria, for instance, you would see mentions about sustainable agriculture, agroecology, and the likes. But when you go through the economic growth and recovery plans of the country, you would see something about chemical and all like that, increasing accessibility to chemical usage. And that has largely been a major thing, a major driver for degrading our ecosystem. The reduction in the diversity of the agricultural varieties of seed, and then but the increase in chemical usage, it affects not just the neighboring land space, but can seep into the groundwater. It affects non-target organism, and that implicates that affects the biodiversity therein in the soil as well. So the coming together of these ministries and agencies is not just for them to formulate policies, but what we really need is, when you are formulating the policies, if you need to formulate a new policy, ensure that you are also having the framework for the implementations there, not just formulation. And if we need to see the policies that we already have that really aligns solutions to the challenge that agricultural poses to the climate and ecological system, then let's have that framework in terms of resources allocation, in terms of time for implementation, in terms of target communities, in terms of what needs to really be done, and then putting that reference to time and then to resources there. That would largely help us in addressing the challenge that we are facing with agriculture and the wider ecosystem conservation space. Yeah.
I mean, that's a good one. That's really a good one. Like, if these people can actually come together to, bring things together, especially for the implementation, that would actually be a success. And okay, now I would like to ask you, like, you mentioned some integrated land use system, and mostly I think I've once discussed about this with you. I'm talking about the agroecology perspective. I'm not really an expert, so I know a bit, but I'm not really an expert when it comes to agroecology. But I know you have vast knowledge in this area. So I would like to ask you, sometimes when people talk about agroecology, they also make use of some kind of like hybrid species, or the use of hybrid species from the international community or some. I really can't say, but I know you understand my perception. Do you think the use of this hybrid species as a form of agroecology would be a way, would also help in the conservation of biodiversity? Or do you think introducing new hybrid species into our own community and agricultural landscape would be a setback by degrading our landscape and reducing biodiversity? When we talk about biodiversity, we have several biodiversity, not just the birds on the farm or the insects. We also have some soil biodiversity, especially biodiversity that helps the agricultural landscape to function the way it also functions. So do you think the introduction of this hybrid crops we see on the landscape is a way of also enhancing biodiversity? Or do you think it's going to allow us to lose some of our biodiversity in the landscape?
Myself, yeah. Before I go to that question, I want to make reference to the earlier question that I talked about. I mean, the project that we've been working on, that set, we understood that to really address the challenges that we have in the food and farming space. I mean, all these diverse stakeholders and the food value chain needs to come together. And this project is one of the many projects in like 17 different countries across the globe, and was chaired by Nourish Scotland. It's basically aimed to, because we know building that trust and relationship and partnership is essential to really strengthen our food system. And we are bringing together the stakeholders. It's been a 9 month long dialogue and consultation, and bringing these stakeholders together to see how everyone can collaboratively work together to really address the food system has really delivered some positive responses. So working in this space, I mean, can really, really help uh, practice agriculture more sustainably. And then coming now to the question about agroecology. Yeah, I mean, this is one major way we believe that agriculture can really address many of the challenges that the existential challenges that we are facing across the globe now, rather than its current status of contributing to it. We believe agroecology is a solution that we can trust, and that's why various platforms across the globe are actually pushing for this. And talking about the hybrid seed aspect of it, I mean, the wider adoption and the major concern for me working in this space has been the threat it poses to our local seed, to our indigenous seed. You know, and the fact that it strengthens the seed company at the expense of the farmers. Not just the cost implication, but it has also infringed on the cultural values and diversity and taste of our food. And that's why the major, if you check the movement as touching agroecology, the movement has been about the fact that it needs to protect, I mean, a local seed, the desert seed from the hybrids, the GMOs and all like that. But unfortunately, we have not seen lots of policy backup to see that our indigenous seed are actually being backed up, and it won't be but how do I put it now? It won't be a shock if you ask some of these ministries, even at the federal level, if we have a seed bank for our local seed, for indigenous seed, and they tell you that we don't have one. It's that disturbing. And the fact that, of course, currently now, as you would know, a majority of the teeming populations of the African continent is being fed by local farmers. And local farmers, their income already is not reflective of their investment. That means it has not really been delivering much income to them. And with hybrid seed, with the modified seed now, it first increases their cost of production, which means that their income gets to reduce as well. And that's like a major disadvantage to agriculture, when even if you are introducing it to a young person, because the reality they can see with their parents who have committed all their lives and everything they have into agriculture is not encouraging. So that's one major pull-off. And it's like saying you're planting. Of course, they tell us that some of these modified seed are actually probably our local seeds that they crossbred and all like that. But when you check it very well, you would see that this is not actually true. I mean, you could even easily draw from the name. And the fact that we have to even import from other countries, of course, they would want to subject it to some quarantine and see if it fits. But I think the major focus now has been on just feeding the increasing population. So focus is getting drifted from people eating healthy. And that's a major challenge. And that's what agroecology looks to address, ensuring that food is the food we are consuming is not just in quantity, but also in quality, and that it meets the nutritional need. And that's the only way we can address the issue of malnutrition, and every other associated defect to it. And but the adoption of the agroecological system has not really uh, been adopted by farmers like that. One, largely because of the market issues. People investing so much in the agriculture. Of course, you at the onset of agroecology, you get to invest more. Now that's just the reality. you get to invest more. And but there are some major practices that would really limit your investment, that will reduce your investment, like the organic fertilizer usage that you'll be using for your farming. If you can produce that organic fertilizer from readily available waste in your environment, compost them, be it liquid or solid form, that reduces the expenses you get to incur on fertilizer applications. Same for the herbicides and all like that, pesticide and all like that. They are natural and biological pesticide that people can use. During our dialogue, of course, we brought together farmers from different local governments and, of course, with city representative, environmental actors, NGOs, and all like that. And some people were talking about the infestation of termites on their farms. Another person stood up amidst the crowd and said she at some point also experienced that, and told the person what she used, locust bean water. That was all she used, and she was able to fight the termite off. So again, I think I'll just speak about the platform for this exchange, for this knowledge sharing. I mean, it could also help to facilitate the adoption of agroecology. Most times we always tell farmers, this is what you should do. This is how best to farm. Farmers don't want to hear that, because most of them have even been in agriculture long before we were born. So when you meet with them and then you want to tell them this is how to farm, they will question you that you were probably in your mother's womb before when I started agriculture. So, but when you the best way we've identified to increase adoption is storytelling. Someone who is also a farmer like themselves, like herself, who has been on the field and have probably adopted these best practices, and the best practice has been delivering to that person in terms of money, in terms of ease of farming engagement and all like that, to share his or her story with the other farmers. It would motivate adoption. But most times what we want to do is we just go, I mean, people who have been in the office all their lives, people that are not connected to the grassroots don't even know what is obtainable on the farm. They want to meet with the farmers and just tell them this is what we do, solely because of research here. But that indigenous aspect of it has to also be always factored in to motivate adoption. Of course, the major challenge, as of a while back, I saw a document being circulated in the Nigerian environment talking about agroecology to farmers, talking about the benefits therein. Of course, they were amazing. Talking about how best they could go about it, amazing. But the language of communication was in English, and then they were given to local farmers who don't even understand English. So then it begs the question, what are you communicating? Because what they don't understand, they definitely won't embrace, and that's just the reality. So communicating in the language that they understand as well would really increase adoption. Same thing with having the market there. The say you are selling the normal crop you produce in the farming system that we are used to, the intensive use of chemicals and the normal practices that we have right now that is not delivering on the conservation and environmental values that we desire. And then the one you produce in the agroecological way, of course, that one you produce via the agroecological system would be higher in cost, I mean in price now, compared to the other one. And then when you take both to the market, of course, people don't have this knowledge. So they would just want to opt for the ones with the lesser price, cost of the price implication. So, but if the market is there, farmers have shown to be willing to embrace these best practices, but the market has not yet been there. One, because the populace has not yet been educated on the importance and values that the food produced in the agroecological way offers to the body. So this knowledge and awareness needs to be there. I mean, education, knowledge sharing is essential for behavioral change. But if those are not there, the adoption will definitely be a major challenge. And the hybrid seed, of course, we need to go back to embracing our local seed. I mean, that is just it. It's like we and the transition is just so fast that people just realize that this seed, they said, can say the value can start producing in say 20 days, where to the local seed can start, I mean, it would take probably 30, 40 days before you'd get to get a return on it. So that knowledge has been one-sided. I mean, it has been one-sided. The compatibility with the soil upon which the farmers would plant. I mean, soils, I can't remember. I don't even think most farmers, especially local farmers, get to test their soils before they plant. They just keep planting and planting until the soil won't deliver the quantity for them again, and then they want to change. So the knowledge needs to be really broad before we can introduce this to them. And hybrid seed has a way of infringing not just on the cultural value, but on the taste, and then, impact negatively on the cost implication of the farmers and the food we eat as well. So, and that's why the agroecological system advocates that our local seed, our indigenous seed, needs to be conserved, needs to be preserved from the hybrid seed and the GMOs and all like that. But you'd hardly see, I mean, farmers don't even know the implication of this hybrid seed and even GMOs, but they have been told one-sided that if you plant this, you'd get more, and then it would increase probably the shelf life and all like that. And one thing they don't tell us is some of this, right, at some point when you plant and you get to consume this food, you taste them, this is different. You definitely know. So, but the adoption of agroecology in its entire scope, in its entirety, I mean, and that's the only way it can mimic the natural diversity of the ecosystem. You can't say you are practicing agroecology and you are using chemical fertilizer, using this chemical inputs and all like that. So the knowledge needs to be broad, and that's the only way agroecology can really be practiced and deliver on set objectives in Africa and beyond. Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful one. I mean, learning from you on how, we can influence adoption among farmers, especially, where I had to write the use of storytelling because, sometimes communication can be a barrier trying to communicate your message. And these are people who has been into the practice before we were even born. So even when you're trying to tell them something, they have their own experience, they have their own knowledge, and they've been adapting to all these crises, for a long while before we even came to the knowledge of what climate crisis is in the prospect of agricultural, sectors and challenges. And it's also good to have learned from you. With increasing food production right now in the world, we would like to accept, the major priority right now is more of food production. Even when we have some countries, like I've read about some national policy whereby you see countries whereby their major agenda and goals for their countries food production, and they get to the international level for the COP and all that, and they still sign some agreements that is contradicting their own national agenda. So it's really good to have gain your own prospect and how different these people can actually come together to achieve the whole agroecological aspect. Now let's move into agroforestry. Somehow agroforestry has been in vogue for a long while, and it has been a way of, experts thinking, like saying that, okay, yeah, this is how agroecology can actually mimic the natural ecosystem. I mean, we having something kind of like a semi-natural ecosystem. So what do you feel about, because now it's more like food production, biodiversity conservation, and the landscape still maintaining its integrity for it to be able to function. Because if we continue using the agricultural landscape the way it's being used, at a point it will be degraded, and it will fragment and it will be abandoned. So but then if we actually use integrated land use system, it will help to for it to continue to restore every diversity element that is needed for it to maintain its ecological function. So, and looking at agroecology, agroforestry perspective, a lot of farmers, which I believe do not want to plant trees because they think that the benefits they will obtain from it, is going to take a long while. So in the prospect of agroforestry, how do you think we can communicate with farmers so they can actually adopt it? Or what do you think in your own prospect that is the challenges farmers are facing, and then different agencies can come through this direction so that the farmers can adopt agroforestry practices?
Yeah, thank you again. I think I'll just speak again to the language of communication, and of
Okay.
course, incentivizing the best practices as well. But I think the major challenge is still the approach of communicating this to the farmers. Like I said, most times when people meet up with farmers, it's something I've experienced at some point when I initially started out myself in this space. You know, like I pointed out earlier, you don't tell farmer this is the best way to practice agriculture. I mean, they won't just listen to you. That is just the truth. Except it's coming from someone they know has been in the field, probably someone in their community, and that again speaks to the importance of engaging someone in the project communities as part of your team when you are to implement a project in a particular community, because they see trusted faces there, and then they want to listen to you more. But of course, talking about the adoption of say planting trees alongside crops and the likes on the farms. Of course, when you tell farmers, the only thing that farmers are thinking about is how can I increase my income? So when you are telling them to uh, use a portion of the land or allow a portion of their land for tree growing, the first thing that comes to their mind is, what do I stand to benefit from this? So if it's something that has been probably land that has already been in cultivation, the best you can probably encourage them, advise them to go into planting of fruit trees on those spaces, because they know that at the point the tree will start producing fruits and then they can sell these fruits to make money. But when you tell them to plant uh, trees like, say, tea species, the Tamilian species, Ivorensis, Superba, and all like that, they will ask you, what do I stand to benefit from this? Because they know it will take a portion of their land. And to them, it will be like, okay, I could have planted something in this space, and within say 6 months, I get 3 months, 6 months, I get to sell and make money. So farmers are looking to see how their investment, their income can reflect their investments and even much more. So, but just telling them to plant the non-fruit trees might discourage them to adopt agroecology as a best practice for one. And you could speak to them about its benefits in erosion control, I mean, cover for other crops on the field. I mean, just when you tell them what they stand to gain, of course, from the monetary aspect of it, and then to the other, how it contributes to the wider agriculture system, the wider food production system, then they might want to consider your options. And then when you are not speaking to them authoritatively, like, I'm sure this is what you should do, this is the best way to practice, and no, they won't listen. But the language of communication, and in the language they clearly understand, I mean, the local language of that project community, that would encourage the adoption of this best practices. Same for every other organic agriculture, agroecology that embodies all these, conservation agriculture, land agroecology, and all like that. So for one, speaks largely to the language of communication. And I think one thing that we've also seen is incentivizing the adoption of these best practices, giving farmers some incentives, not necessarily money, could be value addition, could be in terms of, say, input and all to them, incentivizing them to adopt this. For every tree you're allowed to grow on this your farm, you have this to take for it. That would encourage the adoption for it. And these are some of the things that should be done that has not really been communicated to the farmers, that has not been in practice, not just in Nigeria but Africa as a whole. Incentivizing these best practices has shown to greatly encourage adoption, and that's what, especially among local farmers, this is what we really need. And yes, so that would be it. Language of communication, incentivizing, and then explaining clearly to them these are the benefits that agroecology offers for your farm, and this is how it would influence your income such that it reflects your investment. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Okwe. Now talking about how different agencies can actually build synergies together to be able to work with the farmers so we can actually achieve a good result. I know you've mentioned some points earlier, like the communication aspect, knowledge sharing, and also the issue of incentive is not necessarily it comes in form of money, but it can also come in other area. So now, this is my final question for you. Like, I don't know if you have other comments or other ways you feel that different agencies at the national level can work with the local farmers to ensure that they actually use integrated land use system on the agricultural landscape, and they adopt all these innovative strategies that experts in the world have been mentioning, so that we can actually have a sustainable production and also conserve biodiversity in the landscape, because this biodiversity in a way are also necessary for the landscape to actually ensure sustainable production in a way. So I don't know if you have other comments in this aspect on how they can actually build synergies together, and other comments, any other thing you feel people watching us from various places to know.
Thanks again, Demi. I think largely it's still about the creating of that platform where people can come together and then contribute their reasons, their whys, and of course helping them to say why they should work together in the first place, why that partnership is essential, and why that trust is essential. I think that that's one thing that is largely lacking. When we were starting out the current project that we're working on, we were to meet with farmers. Of course, it was meeting of farmers, city representatives, environmental actors, NGOs, private organizations, seed companies, and all like that. So when we met with the farmers at the first site, I mean, we had established network with a wide range of farmers, but for some that were meeting for the first time and would love to engage, when we met with them, they weren't ready to listen to us. And the reason was because they thought we were from the government. And what they said was they have been promised largely in the past and they have failed them. I mean, they came to them, they made a lot of promises, checked their land, collected a lot of data, and they didn't even come back. I mean, this wasn't just about the people in the government space, but also private individuals that met with them, collected all this data, took pictures of their land, and then come back to feedback them. You know, that already touched the aspect of trust for them. So when we got there, we had to explain what the project is all about and what we were looking to, what we are still looking for to achieve with the project. And that was when, I mean, the first week, the first contact with them, the second contact, they were still doubting if we had the intention of staying to them for a while, staying with them for a while. And but when we kept up the communication, we kept engaging them. I mean, explaining some of these best practices they could use to better the food system, the production and all like that. They kept, I mean, that increased the level of trust amidst us to an extent that they now became the ones even calling us. And when is our next meeting? When are you meeting with us again? When are we meeting with the government? I mean, we had that middle men platform that brought together the different stakeholders in the food and farming chain. So of course, if we were not consistent with our promises to them, that trust would not be there. And for us to really address these challenges in exhausting agriculture, with climate change, with biodiversity, with restoration, if that trust is not there, we might not achieve, we probably won't achieve any results. And that's why that trust needs to be built. And to build that trust, promises needs to be delivered on. Policies there needs framework for implementation. Communities need interventions. Farmers need resources. And all this that has been promised, among others, needs to be delivered on. And I mean, all this needs to be worked on. Let me just put it there. And like I said, the incentive does not need to be in form of money, but could be in form of capacity building, could be in form of providing that platform for the farmers to be heard. Farmers want to be heard. I mean, they have been largely marginalized and unheard for decades. And that's why they felt, okay, let's keep doing it the best way we know we can do it. No matter what the science is saying, no matter what the environment itself is telling them. But their concern is we want food, we want food, we want food. And I need to point this out that the challenge with food insecurity it's not about the quantity of food that is currently being produced. The truth is we produce more than we need to eat, more than we can eat. But many are lost to probably processing, transportation, and all like that. Insecurity. Of course, you would know the reality in Nigeria, the clash between crop farmers and the herders. I mean, cattle roamed into the field where they hit everything that has been planted and all like that, leading to the loss of life and property, conflict, and all like that. Transportation, farmers having to move their goods from the point of production to farm, and everything is lost on the way because of bad road network. So all this needs to really be addressed before we can say we are achieving that transition in our food system. All this needs to be worked on, and that's why and the resources available to local farmers, to local government actors, oftentimes we want to jump that level of governance from the grassroots, from the local to the national, and people at the national are not on the know or in the know of what is obtainable at the grassroots level. And that's where the local governance is. I mean, we need to really explore these options of the local governments, support them not just with resources. I mean, with the capacity building, we have extension officers that need to, surface some of these farmers at the local level, but you'd hardly see them delivering on this because they have more farmers than they ought to have. I think that the standard should be an extension worker to 100 or 1,000 farmers or so. But in Nigeria, we have an extension officer to about 10,000 farmers. Someone who is not delivering to 100 farmers, how would that person deliver to 10,000 farmers? So they leave it be and let the farmers just do it the way they can. And except the farmers that cost them and this and that, when they ought to go to the farmers in their community. And that's one major challenge that we still have, the people, the extension workers wanting the farmers to come meet them in the office when they ought to be the one connecting with the farmers in their community. Because via that, you get to see the farm, you get to see what is obtainable, you get to see where it hurts, and then be able to offer more solution, more advice to them. But they want them to come to their office. And farmers, they want to spend, if possible, the 24 hours on the farm because they want to produce more. So when you ask them to come to your office, of course they won't come because they feel I should be on the farm. Most times when we host meetings, we go to the project communities, we go to the farmers communities because it's easier for us to move down there. It's best for us to move down there. And then the farmers just, we meet some on their farms, some at the community hall, and they get to probably after the meeting easily navigate their way and find their way back onto their farms or to their homes. But having them come meet us would really not make that happen. But so that speaks largely to the aspect of creating that platform for knowledge sharing, for capacity building, and whole. And that's what we really need for trust building, for partnership, and then for lasting relationship building in the food and farming space.
All right, Okwe, thank you today. Thank you for your amazing, exposure and how we can actually recognize, the farmers' rights, their own, gaining their trust to be able to build synergies between different agencies, and how different agencies can actually give them support, not necessarily in form of money, but it could be in form of capacity building, and also probably offering innovative solutions to them that could actually be a way of also gaining their trust. Somehow we've had different people, NGOs, private organizations, and the government promising them what they didn't offer, and this has actually made them lose trust in any project relating to this aspect. So doing all of this, gaining the farmer trust, and building their capacity and sharing knowledge for them is a way of building synergies so that we achieve both food security and biodiversity on agricultural landscape. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and thank you for listening to us. If you have any message for us, please quickly contact us on our Eden World email messages. Thank you. Yours in service, Abisore Temitokwe Rebecca. Bye. See you next Tuesday.